tell me if this sounds familiar. You get this great idea and you are super inspired. You grab your notebook, or maybe you run to the stationery store and you buy yourself a new notebook, and then you get yourself a fancy marker and some pens, and you're going at it for a cool 20 minutes. And then the inspiration kind of fades, or you say, like, well, I'll get to it tomorrow. And for those 20 minutes, though, you felt like hot shit. Like you were an inspired artist, creative person on fire. Or maybe you were able to hold on to the fuel from that inspiration and really get something done. You wrote a script, or you started to create a website, or you wrote the beginning first 5 sentences of a poem. Or maybe you have an idea that you keep thinking about. You've talked about it with your friends or your parents, and hey, do you think this is a good idea? Should I do this? Or maybe you have an idea that's so tiny and it's scary to say out loud. You can't even articulate it because you're afraid to articulate it because then it won't leave you alone. Well, if you're anything like me, you've had some version of any of these different experiences in your life, because I know as a creative person, your inspiration machine is on steroids. It's always coming up with great ideas. And in today's episode, we talk about this process of grabbing onto those ideas, grabbing them by the tail, as I think Mary Oliver says, and holding on to them so that you can make them real. Now, let me just come out with it. As you know, I'm a non-denominational reverend, and I believe that inspirations and ideas are given to us by the universe. You could use the word God if that works better for you, whatever word works for you, that they are divine inspirations. They are given to us from the beyond so that we make something real on this planet because that thing is needed. And you, my dear precious human, are just the one to do it, which is why that inspiration has been given to you. So, that all sounds well and good, but it still only lasts for about 20 minutes. So today's guest, Sarah Chang, is no stranger to the quick inspo. So she's an actress and a writer and a producer, and she lives with her little two ones and her husband in Los Angeles. And it's important that you know that she's a mother, because what we talk about in this episode is a pilot that she's started. Now, you might also recognize her from Dahmer on Netflix. She plays along Rose Byrne in Apple TV's Platonic, which comes out this spring, and other TV film work, right? But what I want you to listen for in the story, if you're the kind of creative who started something and didn't see it all the way through, then you are going to get a ton of value from this conversation. So, as you'll hear me work with her, here's some of the things that come up. So I want you to listen for these things so you can also know what to do the next time it shows up for you. And look, if you like this conversation, if you're already like, oh my gosh, Brian, you are speaking my language. How did you read my diary last night? Then you owe it to yourself to head on over to brianbreakscharacter.com/apply. I'm opening up a few spots in my Make It Real mastermind. And if you have that baby idea, or that, I don't know, adolescent idea, or that little germ of an idea that you want to make real, that's exactly who this mastermind is for. And I would love you to be one of the people in this tiny, intimate community that's making big moves. Again, it's at brianbreakscharacter.com/apply. And we'll set up a call to make sure that this is the best fit for your big idea and whatever is next in your life and career. Okay, so back to this episode. You'll hear me and Sarah talking about this stuff. So one of the things that I know, how often does it come up when you've got this idea? Am I worthy enough to do this? Like, hasn't this already done before? What are the comparison stories that come up? Who's already done this? It's going to cost too much money. Does anybody listening? Does anybody care? And the most potent antidote I know to that question is, who is this project for? If you could decide this is the person who's sitting in the front row of the audience of this, looking at this photo, buying the sweater you've designed, or drinking the cocktail you mixed up together, or reading the book you wrote, right? Who is the number one most important person in that audience? Or maybe it's a demographic of people, right? It's women between 20 and 25. Like, I just really want to imagine who needs this thing, right? And you'll see how this changes things for Sarah. The next part of this you're going to hear me talk about is when we don't know what's next for our project, we lose steam. It's so easy to be like, well, what's going to make it real? Is anybody ever going to read this thing? Does anybody care? So making it have a real world deadline and action were just the trick that she needed to break through the morass of not feeling inspired and unsure of what to do next, and to get her butt in the seat to keep her writing. Because the truth is, without without a container, right? Ideas can just wither and die on the vine because no one but you is giving them fertilizer. Now, the other thing that you'll find in here, and this is one of my favorite parts of this conversation, I have a strong opinion, surprise, surprise, about when you're in a dilemma versus having a choice in front of you. So Sarah wrestled with this a bit, and you'll see how it really cracked open the idea of what's next for her. And of course, you've heard this conversation so many times, because what does it all come down to? Being accountable. So of course, at the end of this conversation, you'll hear Sarah and I come up with some very clear accountability so she can go the distance on this incredibly important story. And side note from me, like personal side note, what Sarah reveals in this episode is vulnerable, and it is deeply moving, and it has all to do with being a mother and being a parent. And so I want to thank her for bringing that to this conversation. And I know anyone out there will feel a great affinity and a empathy towards the story that she wants to tell in this pilot and in the story of her own life. So I can't wait for you to listen. All right, let's get into making Sarah's big idea real. Here we go.
Hi,
Hi,
Sarah.
Brian.
Oh, it is so nice to have you on the
Oh,
podcast. Thanks for saying yes
thank
to
you so much
this.
for having me.
Yeah. So tell me about this thing you've been cooking up. Tell us a little bit
Well,
about
it's
this
been
this
cooking
pilot
for
you've
a
been
couple
cooking up.
years now, and it happened when I had my first baby, and I went through. Nobody talks about what happens after you have the baby, so all this stuff happened medically, chemically, all this stuff happened, and I was just like, I felt like I was like just drowning in water, and
Mm.
you're kind of
With a baby crying the whole
big,
time.
big, cry,
With a
big
baby
crying the whole
crying the whole time.
time. You're breastfeeding. You're
Yeah.
just like you're on no sleep, and you're like you're trying to like stay afloat basically. And you know, and back then I didn't really know how to ask for help or to like you're just kind of operating the way you used to without having to take care of a new life form. And then all of a
Uh-huh.
sudden it kind of throws you into the deep end. And I think that I was like forced to kind of look at a lot of things that I traditionally looked at in my pre-baby life as in a whole new light. So I think change is just like this complete change in my life and my identity and who I was. And
Yeah.
yeah, so I wrote a story about it.
Yeah. And did it come out first as a story? Did it come out first as a story, or did it come out first as a I know we're talking kind of about your pilot today, but did it come out first as a story, or how did you go from I have this idea to pushing a pencil on a paper,
Oh,
clacking a keyboard?
I've been writing in journals since I was very little, and so I've been always wanting to write stories. So I've been always like writing is kind of the way in for me in the beginning, and then yeah, I wrote a couple things before I had babies, and then I realized that was a way I kind of wanted to speak and share some of my personal journey with the world. So then I knew that I was going to write a story because I knew it was going to be cathartic for me, and I knew that I was going to be able to process. This is how I process things. So
Got it. Got it. And so everyone listening, and for you, Sarah, mostly for you, is I want to make sure that, my intention today is to take this idea that came in this precious moment, truly precious moment in your life, and also, as you described, not the greatest moment, like not like, oh my, I'm on a high right now. You're actually saying this is actually kind of a
yeah.
tough moment for you, right? And help you create a container for what happens next with this idea, because the way you've told me this has become a pilot, you've written a pilot, or it's in some kind of development phase. And so my goal here is to shift it, maybe bring some perspective and hopefully some action steps to go wherever it's supposed to go next. So my intention is that you leave today taking away whatever you're meant to take away from our time together, but I'm going to show up fully in service to this thing being made more real. That's my goal here.
Yeah, yeah. Because
Okay.
sometimes
Yeah,
oh,
tell me.
sometimes I
Go for
feel
it. What are you gonna
like
say?
I'm like, well, it has to be a script and it has to be a story that I can be involved in because, I try to bring my acting into it, but sometimes it's hard to just step away and just write the story.
Mm.
So I think in a way it's kind of freeing to think about it in terms of like, we'll just let it be whatever it wants to be. Um, I have a
Great.
tendency to want to
Great. So
craft.
to craft to have the answer what it's going to be at the end.
Yes.
So I love that you said that because I didn't know that. I thought like I'm here to do my pilot, and I love that you said I'm actually open to like okay great, let's see what else comes from this. Maybe I'm acting in it, maybe I'm not. And the
Yeah.
truth is, Sarah, you sure as shit might still up and end up acting in
Okay.
this thing, but by bringing on the perspective for now of I don't have to know that, it might give you some spaciousness to give it its own life.
It's
What was
like
that phrase you just
terrifying,
say?
but also like kind of like exhilarating. Like, oh, I don't have to. Oh, wow, I can. Let's try it. I don't know. Why not? You know? Yeah.
Right. And Sarah, what I see it giving you, and you can tell me this as a writer, is it gives you the ability like, oh, I was making the character so much like me. I didn't think of like, oh, I kind of would love to play a character like this, or maybe she's got this other thing going on for her that I wouldn't have imagined because I was making it me so much. So know that there are gifts that will come from this that we don't have to know yet.
Yeah. Totally.
Okay, I love
I
that
want to know
sigh.
everything,
I love that
Brian. I
sigh.
want to know everything.
I promise there'll be a day when you get to. Okay, so great. So tell me where you're at in the process. Get us up to speed. Like where are we in the process of
Okay,
this?
so
pilot?
I wrote it after I had my first baby. That was just 4 years ago. Well, she just turned 5. And then I had a second baby.
Happy
Thank
birthday.
you. Happy birthday to Elle.
Yes.
Yes. But
Yeah.
then I had a second baby during COVID, so completely stepped away from it for so long, and then had a bit of a more trying experience again. And then I am like re-looking at the first experience because the second experience feels a little too close. So I'm bringing some more informed processing in the first experience, which is like really exciting to me. So I actually haven't looked at it in a while, but it's there, and I just took a look at it before, I was on this call, and I was like, just, I don't know, it's just something fun and interesting and kind of traumatic.
Yeah, sure. So before we get too much into it, I love knowing where you're at. So just so I'm clear, does the pilot feel like, oh, it's written? I might do another draft. I might need an edit. Does it feel like it's written to you? Is my question.
No, it's
Okay.
it's like in the beginning, it's like half written. Yeah,
Okay. And is in your mind, you feel like I know where it's going? Do you have that
I
sense
do.
already?
Yeah, I have the full story.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Great. Wait, I just wanted to, if everyone listening, just like I do, you heard that drop into her voice. So Sarah, I want to make sure you're aware of you're even aware of your own certainty.
Ah,
You know where this is going.
yes.
You know where this is going. That's not the question we're asking
No.
today. Okay. What's the question we're asking today?
I guess I'm looking for an answer to what to do with this in order to be able to share it.
Okay.
Because part of like who I've become, I'm very interested in talking about postpartum depression, like what happens, what happens about, like when you become a mother, and how it's not talked about. There's no dialogue about it. Not a lot.
Yeah.
And I just want to share. I want to share, and
Got it.
yeah, I don't know.
What's important about that? I'm gonna go here first. If we can.
God, I feel like crying.
We allow crying on this show.
You.
Also laughter. Sorry about it.
What's important about it is, it's kind of like connected to who I want. Like I want to share the deepest part of me, and that's why I tell stories. And this was one of the hardest experiences I've ever gone through, and I just want people to. I just want to be seen. Yeah.
And Sarah, what I, if I can reflect back, and you'll tell me if I get this wrong, part of what I'm hearing you say is, I may not have wanted to know this about myself, but I learned something about myself that I think is worth sharing. And I don't know if this is right, so correct this. Is it? And what I learned about myself might help someone, or maybe you can even correct what I've already said.
It is in a way like what you said, like not wanting to learn something about myself before this happened. There was a lot of things that I just wouldn't look at, and it's kind of liberating in a way to look at who you are really, and letting the world know who you are really truly without trying to hide behind who you think you should be. And becoming a mother has allowed me to find that.
Yeah. I love what you're saying, Sarah, so much. Was there another thought you were about to say? I don't want to cut you off.
Probably, but mommy brain, so I'm all
Let's
over
see
the
if it goes
place.
right. Well, one of the things, here's what I took away from what you're saying, and you can say, no, Brian, that's not what I want you to take away. But what I heard you say is we learn something about ourselves when we are tested. And it does, and in this particular manifestation in your pilot, this is the story of becoming a mom for a first time. And I think maybe the second time there's some informed experience from the second time. But in the same way that we can think of like Gladiator is about someone being tested in a certain way, so that there is you're learning a strength of your own, or in that crucible of growth, you learned more about yourself than maybe in like running to the grocery store on a random Wednesday. Like, right. And and this is where I think I want to even get you a little clearer, and you can help me in what is important about sharing that particular piece with people.
I have like smart answers, but I'm kind of like, what? I think I want for myself, I realize that there's hope, and I want people to know that there's hope beyond what you might not see at this point. Yeah.
Great. I love that. So this thing has hope. This thing. I mean, meaning like it actually has hope in it. Not this thing has hope.
Right.
This thing has hope
Right.
in it. Right.
And just having the faith that there is, that even if you can't see it, it's still there.
Right. Oh, so you're not spiritual at all, I see. Yeah. So who is this for? Who needs to tune into this thing when it's in the world? Who do you think needs to watch it more than anyone?
I want to tell the story for my daughter, because if there's the next generation, I want the stories to be repeated and learned from, and I want her to know what I went through to have her, in case something happens to her.
You're parenting her through this, I almost hear you saying.
Yeah.
And it brings something up. What's here now? What's the feeling that's come up from that?
I just feel like a little unworthy, or like just feels kind of cheesy or corny, or like, oh, how silly, But I mean, I think about Elizabeth Gilbert always said, like, write a story for someone. And when you asked me that question, I was like, oh, that's for her. I didn't realize that was for her. Okay, this puts things in a whole new light. Like, I am telling her all the intricate details of my story, because sometimes, I don't necessarily sit down and be like, okay, let's talk about my story,
Yeah. I mean, very few of us do. So good job, Sarah. Like, this is, like, to make sure, like, you're right. That's a good, but I love that realization. This is who it's for. And what do you imagine this will give her?
You know how sometimes, well, I grew up like thinking my parents were perfect until a certain point, and they were like, whoa, they're not perfect. And so I really...
Damn, it's too bad we don't figure that out when we're 5 years old, right? If we knew we were 5, we would have been like, oh, okay, great. We're all just trying to do this.
Really? Oh, you're
Perfect.
human. Yeah, I say that to her. I'm like, I am human. I don't know things, and I can see the shock in her like, what? You don't know? I thought I would know everything when I'm a grown up,
Yes. You're the mommy. Mommies know everything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think like to show her how much I didn't know, and how difficult it was, but how wonderful it was in a way,
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm going to push even further because you're doing so great. What do you think having that information or that knowledge will give her?
The only word that comes to mind is grace, because to have a little bit more grace about her own journey and her own process and the struggles in her life, allowing it to be without having this judgment on top of it. I have a lot of judgment of all the things that have happened in my life, and I want her to take that off and be like, you know what? My mother went through this. I can go through this. I can find a way through it. some grace.
That's a pretty great thing for a parent to give to a child.
I think it's something I didn't learn, so it's very important for me to do.
So there's almost an ancestral need, is what I'm hearing you say.
Absolutely.
It's bigger than just even. It's a generational share. It's a generational knowledge you want to pass forward.
I want to shift that, and I want to turn it.
Yeah. And you want to turn it, and yes, your daughter gets this, and it's public.
Yes.
Tell me about that. What is that dynamic about?
I don't.
Certainly you're skilled as an actress and you know this world. So that could be a piece of it, but let's pretend this could have been a painting for a second, but you decided it was a pilot. Let's add some consciousness to the decision of it being a pilot first. If we can just entertain that idea for a moment. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. What's the, if you were to give a reason of, it needs to be a pilot because?
Because I feel like I'm good at like kind of like getting into the essence of things, but if I don't share it with anyone, it doesn't mean any, and like it means something to me, but it doesn't connect me to somebody else. And I want to be connected to people I don't know, or people who might seem different from me. Or so it's my way of just reaching out and be like, do you ever feel like this? Do you ever feel this fucked up? Are you ever this crazy? Like, oh, you are? Oh, okay. Yes. Maybe it's okay that we're both kind of, extreme.
Yeah. Yes. And I love that. And so what I hear you saying is, I want people to recognize their own humanity. And like, we don't always look perfect. Like, we're not the perfect parents that we pretended. Like, so this is a stage, literally a stage or a screen where you can see it. So you're going to see it enacted. And then I want to not deny, everyone who's listening, and to you specifically, Sarah, like, we're given our own gifts in this lifetime, and you've discovered yours is around acting. So of course, this is the place where you're most proficient or able to tell this story, or gifted to tell this, or maybe most aligned to tell this story. So I think also want to like bring that into the conversation. So just tracking what we've noticed here, so we can, shift today, is the story's for Ella. That's her name, correct? Elle. Sorry, this is story's for Elle. Sorry, yes, got it. Sorry, I got that wrong. Apology there. The story's for Elle, and it's for other humans to recognize their own messiness, and that it is normal to normalize the messiness, and it is to make up for a generational gap in knowledge that I wish I had had. So I'm parenting myself while I'm parenting Elle. I'm parenting Elle's, my grandchildren someday. I'm shifting the paradigm around this moment in someone's life, and also, because this is about a moment in your life, or a season, let's say, and also the paradigm of needing to look perfect or have it all together.
Yeah, and that was a struggle up until that point. Just do it. Just pretend. Great. Everything's perfect. Everything's, it's like, oh, fuck, it's not, but it is. And I tried really hard.
Yes, there's a beautiful baby here, but there's all this other stuff. Yes. Yeah. Is there anything that I didn't say that needs to be tracked before we kind of
No, I don't think so.
Shift this conversation. Okay, great. So, cool. Let's pretend I had a magic wand and this pilot was happening, right? Where do you see it happening? Fill in the blank in any way.
Okay, so I do have something to share. I have a friend, and she is writing stories about women going through transformation. And she was like, oh, why don't you add your story? And it's like an anthology series. And she's like, why don't you?
Television series.
Her television series. And she knows a lot of people. And, and she got a producer on board. And then, like, I came on kind of towards the middle end. But then, so I was like, oh, maybe I'll just write this story for that. But I'm not sure if I'm writing it for that because, we're supposed to meet with the producer eventually and all that stuff, blah, blah, blah. But I don't know if I want to write it for that show or if I want it to become its own thing. So I'm a little stuck on that.
So great. Great. Let's deal with that. So first of all, what would you like it to be? If your friend didn't exist, would you imagine it being expressed in that way?
Yeah, part of me wants to be like, yes, I just want to get it out, like that story, whatever, in whatever form, like just get it out. So that seems like the easiest way to get it out. But in a way, it does feel like it could be like a long story, longer story than just one television episode.
So here's what I want to reflect back what I'm seeing. So first of all, we got very technical and cerebral for a second, which is normal in this moment. So good job going there. And that you ever right. Isn't it the pits when a creative idea comes to you and you're like, can I just get it done and over with so I can
Exactly.
get it
Yes.
out of my body? I mean, we're talking about birth right now. So we're talking about birth right now. So
Can I get an epidural while
yeah.
at it?
Yes. You know more than I do about all this. Right. So I'll just say, we're recording this on, in January, right after Christmas. And I'm just going to use Christmas as an analogy for everybody. So it doesn't matter what religion you are at all, or no religion, but I just want to use Christmas as an analogy is when we talk about the Immaculate Conception. The idea of that is that you're given, the metaphysical idea of that is you're given an idea, you're given something to be born from the divine. So you're given this idea, birth this story because people need to hear it. And then first you're like, this is not real. This is not possible. How can it be that I really am pregnant with this idea? That can't be right. And like, you're probably like, get it out. Let's get it over with. Let's get this thing over with. Right. So I just want to just like acknowledge that little piece of super meta this conversation is. But so your friend is the fast track to the relief.
Yes.
To supposed relief, I will just say, perhaps, right? Is that, and so what I think you identified, and you can tell that I'm not sure if this is solid ground yet, so you'll check. I'm not sure that is the extent of the impact that you want to have, and I don't say that because I think it's a bad idea. I want to make sure, and I'm not waging a vote here. I'm making spaciousness for you to think about it. So as I kind of ask the question again, maybe not that eloquently actually, but as I ask the question again, do you feel like, yeah, I think this friend thing is the thing, or do you feel like it might be part of the journey and not the...
It might be part of the journey. I mean, it kind of got me back interested into that story. But yeah, I feel like what you're saying is like, yeah, it does seem like, okay, just get it done with in 30 minutes and done. And then I'll write a new story about something else and, blah, blah, move on. But it's such a pivotal moment that I really do want to give it some time and space and let me.
Yeah. The respect for
yes,
it. Yeah.
That's.
The respect for what this is big. Great. Okay, great. So can you and I agree? We're going to dream the big dream.
Okay.
For now. And your friend's awesome, incredible, possible opportunity could be an incredible stepping stone towards its eventual large manifestation.
Oh, so not negating it, but like incorporating it.
Right. I could see totally a world where it becomes one episode of Mythology Theory series that then becomes its own series.
Oh, right. Yes, of course. Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Does that make sense to you? And then I also want to just share with you, and I say this before on the podcast, but when we're choosing between two things, it's a dilemma. When we're choosing between three, it's actually a choice.
Oh.
So when we're choosing between, should I do my friends or should I do the pilot on my own? That is a dilemma. When there's like, should I choose my friends? Should I do my own? Is there a hybrid? That to me is actually truly having a choice. So I want to throw that. You could choose any one of them still, but now that you've got the three choices, it opens your brain differently. It doesn't mean the third one is the right answer, but it means like, oh, I could do it on my own. So let's play out the idea of it's a stepping stone or one version of expression, because that sounds like it'll give you.
It does. It totally does. Right? Yeah.
And one of the things, if I can just like sidebar, underline, side coaching for a different day, is go full tilt into the conversation with your friend, unafraid that it will take away from its eventual larger manifestation.
Okay.
Does that make sense when I say it?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I got a taste of it. I feel like it's like I'm not withholding anything, and I'm just like going into the story and bringing the juicy parts of the story, and that'll even be the jumping point for whatever the rest of it is.
Yeah. Don't like, I'm going to save this part of the story for the big one day. Like, make the thing that's going to be in an anthology the best possible thing it can ever freaking be. Because the mediocre version or the step down from it isn't going to be the thing that launches this to somewhere else. And let's just also be very aware. You might do that and suddenly like, oh, that was like, let's be open to that might be the answer. It might be like, oh, that thing that I thought was a stepping stone, that was all it needed to be. I've got this other story that's come to me, right? So we're just being very unattached to it must look like X. Yeah, what did that give you?
Oh, just like relief. Like, oh, I don't have to control it. It can be this. Let's try this, and then let's see what else happens. But let's put it all our eggs into this basket, and then watch it grow. And it seems fun.
The way I think about that is putting all your eggs in the basket, knowing there's another basket right there. So like you're not losing the idea that there's another basket around the corner. Is another way to think of that. And I'll just share like from my own coaching history. When I'm teaching like a free masterclass or something like that, there can be a tendency to be like, well, keep the most important secret till they buy the course or something. Actually, it's much more exciting to offer the juiciest kind of thing in any of the free trainings that I offer, because then someone gets to say like, oh, wow, that's what the coolness of this is. I can decide if that's kind of what I want to jump into. And so again, let's just paint the scenario, the very real world scenario of producers at HBO watching this anthology series and seeing your episode and be like, oh my gosh, that is so amazing. That could be its own, like, it's not going to be the watered down version that's going to catch their attention, right? It's going to be the one that, and if I can just put like a vote moment here, I think that this topic sounds so perfect for the series that your friend is talking about, and unique. Like you've said, it's a story that's not told. So I think that your friend in her series would be lucky to have this be included. So if I can just say that as a Brian moment for you, because like I feel that way personally. So we in this moment, with the moments we have together, are a little bit at a crossroads. I want to just offer, if you didn't know, where we could say, let's build the spaciousness around saying yes to the anthology, and let's talk about like what that looks like to make more real. Or would you prefer to use our time to talk about the bigger what's next question? Here's why I put a little. You know how when you look at a map and there's a legend and there's like, this is what the little tree stands for, that there's a bathroom here, and there's a little this sense, like when you look at a map, like if you look at a big map, it's like this X on the mark means you are here. The legend that I'm going to give you as we look at the map of what's ahead of us is, if we really go into the big dream one, you're going to have a lot of tools that you might not need right away, since this anthology is right in front of you. So if I'm casting a vote, which I'm not because this is your time, I would say it might be more helpful to you to say, let's build freedom around the anthology. But you know where you're at more than I do. So check in with yourself.
So is a question like, are we going to go into the anthology coaching, or are we going to go kind of into the bigger picture stuff? Is that right?
Yeah, and I might be being a dipshit right now, and like maybe the bigger picture, because maybe the bigger picture includes the anthology. So let's not even give us a choice here for a second. Let's go back to this. Let me come back to you, because you have the answer and not me. So let's erase that from what I just said. Pretend you never heard that. Listeners, you never heard that either. Sarah, what's the best place for us to go next?
A part of me is just like, just write it, just sit and write it, and then where do I go next with that? I that's kind of the biggest question for me. Is like, what do I do with this thing I just wrote?
Yeah.
Because for acting, you can just, you can get it on tape and send it out. But I'm not very like versed in like what to do with the thing.
Right. In terms of like, how do I pitch this thing if I'm going to pitch it someday? And
what does that look like? Yeah.
Okay, great. Great. So let's talk about pitching. I've done this with many a client, so this is not going to be foreign territory for me. So I want you to know that you're in, I don't know, kind of versed hands, I should say, right? So you feel safe about that. And I want to make sure you also know there are certain things that happen in pitches, and also all expectations can be thrown out the door, because some pitches are just chit chats, and sometimes there's a deck and there's a script and there's a blah, 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 right? So I want to let go of the idea that they all are cookie cutter. And I want to come back to Sarah and say, Sarah, when you imagine pitching something like this, what do you think you would like to share? How would you like to share this story? Should I give you some choices here for a second? Yeah. So I want to have a pitch deck. I want to have a proof of concept that's like a short video that's a piece of it. I want to have a script. And I want to imagine yourself, just for a moment, in a room with a generous and positive audience of people, like 3 or 4 people, who are really excited to hear your idea. They're generous and positive. This isn't a room where you have to prove yourself at all. And what would make you feel the most equipped to share this with them? Would it be a scene from the thing that you've actually acted in or someone has acted in? Would it be the script and a pitch deck? What makes you feel, without having to armor up with these things, which is why I'm saying they're a very positive and generous and on your side audience. How would you feel the best about sharing?
What is it? The video,
Video. Like
proof of concept
kind of thing.
Yeah.
Great. Cool. Great. And I think probably in any scenario here, you're probably looking at some version of a script. Right? I just make sure that, right? Unless you're and you know what? There are probably experts out there that are talking about pitching, and there's an episode on this podcast that you can listen to with David Rose. David Rose. That's not his name. That's the star. It's free. Natalie, if you want to pop on and tell us that episode, you can pop in here because we're having a great conversation. So about pitching. And there are certain ways that I'm sure people will say, this is how you pitch TV. And I'm certain that there are exact steps to take. But where we are right now, today, on the day when you're like, this thing isn't even written yet, I want to live in the land of what's going to leave you the most juiciest and most likely to complete the tasks in front of you. So that's what's important here. So I also am kind of like asking you to put blinders on and earplugs, like where you're not going to listen to other input, so that you can stay in your most creative, resourceful self. Great. So if those of you, so Sarah, you'll definitely want to listen to episode 17, and anybody else who's thinking about TV pitching, episode 17 with Danny Rose is a good one. So, Sarah, I want to just check in here. The blinders and the earplugs are kind of, I believe that when we're blessed with a creative idea, it's very possible for us to kinesthetically experience when we share that idea, kind of getting over it. We get writer's block. The more we share it with other people, the less likely we are to write it. Because our body has experienced the cathartic experience of sharing it or doing it. So I saw you have a big sigh here. Have you talked about this with a lot of people yet?
I mean, not that many people, but it does feel like the more I do share it, it does feel like, does it even matter, that much anymore?
Yeah. And part of what's happening, and the reason why that happens, if I can give you just a little intel to help yourself, is when you're sharing it, you're kind of, without trying, because I don't think this is conscious, you're looking for a little verification for someone to say this is a good idea. And even if they say, yes, it's a good idea, whatever comes after, yes, it's a good idea, can affect the outcome of how you decide to do it. Yes, it's a good idea. And I love the fact that you might do 1, 2, 3, ABC. So I want to acknowledge we're in a coaching container where I'm talking about this and creating, and you're allowed to write off anything I've said today that's not actually going to help you write the story you want to tell. But I would just be mindful of sharing it with anybody else or looking for more outside advice of how to do this. Because what we know right now is Sarah will feel empowered when, fill in the blank, I have a proof of concept of some sort and a script. Those two things are going to make me feel empowered. And you know what? Maybe I'll go get some kind of support on when I'm going to pitch or when I'm going to reach out. But right now, those are the things I want to work on.
I see. Okay,
great. So let's build a little accountability around the script.
Okay.
Scale of 1 to 5, how done is the script? 5 being totally done.
2.
Yeah. Great. Cool. For you to feel, so today is, mid-January-ish or early January. Pick a date at random that feels like a date you want to be accountable to. Maybe it's a month from now. Maybe it's 6 weeks from now. I let you choose.
I was thinking this quarter. So like January to March. Yeah.
Great. So let's say April 1st, right? So by April 1st, you're at a 2 now. Where would you like the number to be at?
I'd like to be done with the script at least. So
is that a 5 with the script, or are you feeling like at a 4 with the script?
5 with the script, and then like ready to do the proof of concept.
Gorgeous. Great. Love that accountability. That's great. Without a question, let's say yes to that. So by April 1st, the script is done, and I'm ready to do whatever is next with the proof of concept. I'm ready to take my next step. Great. So also by April 1st is like maybe the foundation or the pre-production or whatever it is for the proof of concept. Great. I saw a big nod there. Yeah. Does that sound? So let's imagine it's April 1st for a second, 2023. You've got this sexy script in your hand, and you're going to do this proof of concept. How's that just like feel?
It feels so good. It feels like I don't know, like exciting and
good. And I'm going to ask you something, and you're not allowed to tell this person, but who's the person you'd be most excited to like share that you're ready to do this with? Who comes up for you?
My daughter. She's wanting.
Great.
She's like, let's make a movie together. I want to be in a movie so we can watch it. I was like, oh,
Great. Oh my God, that's amazing. Great. So we have a budding actress in your house. Fabulous. Oh God, here we go. Okay. So also keeping it for you until then is a great thing. So you get to share it with her. So there's a celebration.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Okay, good. Great. So then let's build, so that's the first piece of accountability. So between now and then, that's like, what is that, 8, 10 weeks?
Uh-huh.
How many pages is a pilot typically?
I'm
going
30?
to get this wrong, so you have to tell me.
30.
Great. That sounds about right. 30, 35, I think is about right. Yeah. Great. So, and you're at a 2, and you want to get to a 5. So is there any structure that would be helpful to say out loud while we're here together around the writing of it? You have a whole family you're managing over there, so that's why I'm offering like what supports Sarah the most when it comes to writing?
Like figuring out when to actually do it, because it's kind of last priority when an audition comes in.
Sure.
My stuff comes in.
Sure. Yeah.
So I think it's just carving out the time to actually sit down and write it.
Do it. And when you write, are you someone who tends to, we all have our own like patterns. Like I'm a good, like at about 90 minutes of writing, I'm like, I need to it's time to have lunch. I got to do something else. Like I have a cap on how much attention I can
Yes.
give it. Do you have an energetic cap that you know in yourself? It might be
Yeah.
longer, it might be shorter.
Probably shorter.
Okay.
30 minutes to an hour, I think somewhere around there. Maybe 45 minutes. Yeah.
Great. And when you're thinking about the way you want to feel on April 1st, is it something that you want to feel like, you know what, if I put in 1 hour a week, I feel like that is bomb because that's plenty of time? Or do you feel like it wants to get 2 hours a week, 90 minutes total? Just, you have to get this right. This is just
hmm
us making a stab for
hmm
now.
1 hour a week sounds okay. Yeah.
Awesome. That's like 10 hours between now and April 1st. Just that's a good
Okay.
chunk of time.
Yeah.
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 Great.
Part of me is like, oh no, it's not
Great.
enough. And like my automatic response, like, no, it's not enough. It's never gonna,
Sure.
it's never gonna be enough. How are you gonna get pre-production done? Blah blah blah. So, um,
Let's say an hour a
okay.
week. Let's try
Okay.
that. Let's start with an
Okay.
hour a week. And then, Sarah, I want to also, you said this earlier, so I'm going to say something back to you. You said, I want people to have faith that even though they don't know what's coming or they don't know what's there, that there will be some kind of support or they can rely on something forward. So I want you to even have some faith on that in yourself. I'm going to steal from Madeline L'Angle. I'm quoting her a lot lately. She has a quote that says, you love her? Wrinkle in Time, right? So she says, I'm going to botch this quote, but it's something like, inspiration strikes while we're working. So I think we tend to think, I'll write when I'm
hmm
inspired, right? And the truth is, we've been seduced into that because, Sarah, you had an idea. You
Yeah.
were inspired. Like, oh my gosh, I need to tell the story, right? So we have that moment, but then the work of it doesn't always feel the same as when the divine idea just gets
Yes.
delivered. And it's our expectation that it will over and over again that makes us hit our head up against the wall. So we're like, okay, great. Madeline L'Angle, you're
Okay.
smarter than me. I'm just going to start writing even though I don't feel like it right now because I know once I start, something will happen. And so where I'm trying to bring this is this 1 hour a week may end up being, I need to get to that script and I want to do 30 minutes today on top of the 1 hour I already did. So I want to just be aware of like, we're building the base level
I see.
accountability.
It's not like, Sarah, you only have to do an hour, so stop at an hour.
Right. No, yeah, you're
Yeah.
not allowed. Right. Okay. So for us to build some accountability around the first hour, right? Between now and next, today's what? Wednesday? Between now and next Wednesday. How would you like to be in touch with me? Do you want to send me an
Send you an email.
email? Do you want to DM me? Do you want to eat? See, great. Will you let me know you've done your hour? Is there any other? You said carving out the time. So I want to check in with you. And for those of you who are creative, you get this. It is scary to put things on your calendar. Because when you put it on your calendar, it makes it real. And it also means like maybe I'm not available for the other things that are coming my way from the
Yes.
universe. Is that your relationship or is there something
Totally.
missing
No,
from that?
totally. Like commercial auditions,
Okay.
theatrical auditions, like, oh, I gotta drop everything, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. So what I would love for, if you're willing to, I'd love you to actually put on your calendar right now, pull out your calendar. You can't right now because you're on the phone with me. So that's okay. You can do it
Okay.
after this. Email me after our call today and say, here's the hour I've set aside or the 2 30-minute sessions I've set aside for my writing. And we both know the audition comes, something happens with Elle, you need to give her your attention. Something happens where you got to run to the doctors or God forbid, right? That gets to move on your calendar as opposed to never being on your calendar.
Reschedule with myself. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe the email I get next week is, Brian, I did a half hour, but my second half hour is scheduled for later today because I had to reschedule. So we're always accountable to that 1 hour. Does that kind of
Yeah,
make sense to you?
totally.
Okay. And so then I want to talk about this proof of concept idea.
Okay.
Okay. So I am taking away my own consult brain right now, which is like, I have ideas of what this could look like and da 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 da, because it's yours. So when you have the idea about a proof of concept, what do you imagine would be fun, important, impactful to share in that room when you're pitching, or that Zoom room, or that, when you're pitching, that's going to make them understand what you said to me at the beginning of the call? Why the story has to be told now, who it's going to affect, what it's going to remind them of. What would you like them to see so that they get it?
The thing that comes to me is like, I find a lot of humor in very kind of dark, dramatic moments. And so I feel like this could be comedic, but it's like, you have a suicidal postpartum mother who's just about to step in front of a bus, So I think like just finding the moments of crisis, but also like finding some humor in it sounds silly. I don't know.
Sarah, yes, 1,000 times yes. Everyone listening is like, I mean, we can see the image of what you're saying. Run, do not walk to this proof of
Okay.
concept. And I'm imagining that this is probably a moment that it's in your pilot. It's some,
Yes.
right? It's probably like the moment you're like, oh my gosh, this is the most essence of my
Yes.
show moment in the pilot,
Totally.
right? So I just want you to continue to run toward it in that way. Run toward the
Okay.
bus, right? Run toward it in that
Okay.
way and also, in case you haven't turned on the TV lately, and I know that you have, that's the kind of TV shows we're all wanting to watch. We're wanting to watch dark comedies that connect with our true
Yes.
humanity. So thank goodness there's a market for what you're saying, but it also makes me know, like, if we like to think of this as opposed to just like Sarah had this wild idea, but like Sarah is in the zeitgeist of the ideas that are making an impact right now. So your intuition around how the story should be told, and yes, it is your version of the stories that you like to be told. That is yours to own, but you're also telling it in a way that you know will actually land on screens, will actually affect people.
And I feel like it's
Right.
most me, like sometimes I don't know whether to
Great.
laugh or to cry. And so it's like, well, there's both, So,
Yeah.
and those are the kind of stories I want to tell. I got clear on that last year and this year. I was like, those are the kind of stories I want to tell. So.
Great. One of the things that I'm taking away from what you just said also is, like, it has to be the most Sarah that can possibly be, which means I'm taking it back to not sharing it with other people or getting input on it. Like, yeah. Does that make sense?
It does, because that's actually been part of my, I don't really do New Year's resolutions, but I'm like, just listening to my voice, like listening to what I actually want to say and do as opposed to what I think other people want me to say and do and be, and cutting out noise and just like following that line of who I am, because I feel like as long as I can stay there, it'll mean something to somebody, and then that'll be that. That'll be the thing. That's the thing for me.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love what you say. I love that if you're watching this on YouTube, she's like using her little finger so perfectly to, yeah. And also, like, I want to just be where you and I have both seen television shows or movies that are made by committee where the essence of it is watered down, and it might be entertaining, but it's not having the impact. And what you just said is the person who's going to get this is the one who, the more you it is, the more successful it will be, is my belief. So I want to just piggyback on this a little bit when it comes to writing process. When you feel writer's block or stuckness, it is the worst time for you to ask for help.
Oh. Huh.
The reason you are stuck is you haven't found the most Sarah version yet. You're meant to wrestle.
Okay.
That piss
Yeah,
you off?
What the fuck?
So wait, I just want to be really mindful here, because you said at the beginning, I've gotten better at asking for help. I want to be mindful. It is different between saying, I have a relationship with a writing coach where we create a really safe container, and talking about ideas does not mean I have to run toward the ideas and I'm bouncing things off of them. And we've created a space, or it's working with me in this way, right, where we've created a space where we're talking about the ideas where I'm not attaching outside validation or anything to them. So I don't want to say that you can't ask for help there, but what I would just advocate for is, if you're going to ask for help in that space, it's a very conscious ask to someone that's got a great container with you, because it might be the spot where you're like, you have to stay rooted in, yeah, that's not me. So when you're talking to this person, you say, yeah, I like that idea, but that's not the Sarah idea. It doesn't have to be that you can steal their idea because they gave it to you, but I mean, that doesn't feel Sarah enough. That's not quite this character enough. That isn't quite there enough. It's so close. Let me play with that and go back into my workshop for a couple weeks with what you shared with me. Right? So what I'm trying to do is relabel writer's block as not bad, but great.
Okay, fine. All right, I'll try.
Right? Or you might think of it this way. Have you ever done Meisner in your lifetime?
Yes, it drives me crazy.
Right? Right, sure. Like, so what we say is the acting happens on the beat change, or the acting happens between the lines, not on the lines. So the writing happens between the writing, not just on the writing.
Gosh.
That's the way I relate to that.
It hits home. Yeah.
Okay. What do you take from that? What does that
it kind of gives me like this, like, I know what I want to say on, but then like in between the stuff that I am saying, I actually find what I'm saying.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah. The gesture and stuff like that. So I want to give you an assignment around this to make you feel really free. So you need to tell me first, if you watch shows, does it help or hurt you in terms of inspiration?
It depends on how I approach it. And to watch something, it's like, oh, let me get the structure, blah, 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 blah. So it doesn't help when I do that. If it's something that like it deeply impacts me, then it's so inspiring.
Great. Great. So I have a question. So here's where I was going with this, and you can see if this sounds like an accountable piece around this. So I had an idea of like, let's pick like 3 shows that you watch for delight and not for structure at all, but like, how are they telling this dark comedy story? And like, let me just embrace, like, see how they did it as a way to inspire me, not to say they are the masters and I am the loser. Like, that's not allowed to be what comes from it, right?
Yeah.
Right. So that could be one assignment here. And then the other one is for you to, and this is kind of a writing exercise along with your writing, is like, let me just articulate what that proof of concept moment is. It can change later. But let me tell the story. Maybe it's even writing the story of it. Like you said, I process by writing the story. So it doesn't even have to be lines yet. But here's what I see in that proof of concept video. That's one scene that sticks there.
Yeah.
Does this sound like a way that will open things up or get you reinvested in this? Or is it going to be busy work? I don't want to give you busy
No,
work.
I totally, like, I see the proof of concept. Like, the images I can definitely just add in, and, you know, it's just that one image, and then it's pretty simple. So it's just like, it seems like just one little thing, and then it's like, yeah.
Okay, great. Then maybe the writing piece is not as necessary as just you doing the real writing and maybe thinking about, and maybe that's it. Maybe that's the only assignment that needs to be here. Did I miscommunicate or mishear you? Are you saying, yes, it's a good idea to write out the POC, proof of concept? Or are you saying like, you do? Okay, you do think it's a good idea. Great, cool, great. Yeah. The other thing that I want to just advocate as we're kind of rounding this out here is, and this is for everyone listening, is when an idea is in our head versus on a screen or on paper, like either you've written it on paper, you've written it on, Google Doc or whatever. I believe when it's in our heads, it doesn't have the power to attract kind of the ideas that are in the world of the moment. Because it's stuck in our head and it only has the ghosts of our head to mess around, or ghosts of future, past, and whatever to bounce around. And when it's been made manifest like on the planet outside of our spirit and head, it suddenly can attract some other ideas. So the sooner you get this thing on paper in any way, I know you've got some of it on paper, the sooner it'll start to, like, even if no one's seeing it, like the next time you open that notebook, oh, I have these other ideas because I just believe, like this may sound a little woo-woo, but I believe it attracts in a different way. Because you're relating to it differently than just it's in my head, it's in my head, it's in my head.
Like, get it out of you so you can see it. Like,
yes.
What about this? What about this? Yeah.
So then can I give you a show to watch that I think is super
please. I would love it.
Okay. So if y'all haven't watched this show yet, it's called As We See It.
No.
Have you seen it? It's by the guy who did Friday Night Lights. It's on Amazon. One season so far. It's about, I'll give you a little brief synopsis. It's about 3 autistic adults who are living with a caretaker, and they're living in an apartment. And you'll recognize one of the actresses has been on a million shows, and the actors who are playing the autistic adults truly are on the spectrum. So it's really kind of amazing. And the show is full of heart, and it is a dark comedy in the way that you're describing. It kind of has those iconic image moments. So the reason why the show popped in my mind is you said, I have this really clear image of this really epitomizing what the show is about. And I think this show does a good job of images telling their story, not just words telling their story. So I think that could be a good way for you to, let me open is a way to open your mind. Also, everybody, great recommendation for a show. My boyfriend and I were we would only watch one episode a night because we never wanted it to end. Because you're crying every episode. You're crying every episode. You're laughing laughing every episode. It's the kind of show you'll love. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So Sarah, just to kind of bring our accountability to bring this all to home here. Couple of things that I heard. One is a couple accountability pieces. One is you're going to write the proof of concept. You're going to move your script from a 2 to a 5 over the next 10 weeks by April 1st. You're going to get it done. I want to be very mindful of the 1 hour a week is what you're going to work towards by putting it on your calendar. You're going to check in with me weekly to say, this is what I did or didn't do. So I'm going to hear from you every Wednesday. Can you pick a time that you email me by?
4:00.
Great. 4:00 Pacific time. Every Wednesday I get an email from Sarah that says, I did my 1 hour on this day and this day. And what I'd like this to really get clear in the accountability, this is where fierceness comes in accountability. You report what you did and you give me the forecast for when you're doing the next hour. I've already scheduled an hour on Sunday from 2 to 3 when I'm going to get the next one done. And then when you come back, go, actually, it didn't happen on Sunday. It happened on Tuesday and Wednesday. Whatever, it doesn't mean that you had to do it then for it to be successful. What's successful is you did an hour. I don't care when you did it, but your success is also measured by you saving the time you're making the time on your calendar, even if it has to move.
Yes,
does that make sense?
Totally.
So I want to leave the space for you to be with your thoughts today. So the rest of the day, just be gentle with yourself. Allow new thoughts to come in. No need to take great, huge action today. And allow that this is stirring things up. And my only request for you today is your willingness to be moved, to be stirred by what happens today. Cool. And I'll hear from you next Wednesday. All right. I loved spending this time with you, so thank you so much. All right. All right. Thank you so much, Sarah. All right. Bye-bye.